Do you know what it feels like to walk home and unknowingly cross paths with a predator? Have you ever wondered how a single day can change the course of multiple lives forever? The case of Kayleigh and Amy is one of those chilling true stories that exposes the terrifying reality lurking in the streets of South Boston. On the early morning of July 23, 2013, South Boston was rocked by a string of violent attacks that would leave the city on edge. At 4:23 a.m., Alexandra Cruz, a 21-year-old single mother, was making her way to the Dunkin' Donuts where she worked. She had left her young son with a babysitter and was walking along the quiet streets of Old Colony Avenue, unaware that a man was following her. Without warning, he grabbed her from behind, wrapping his arm around her neck and dragging her into a nearby parking lot. Alexandra fought back, but the attacker punched her repeatedly until she blacked out. When she regained consciousness, she found herself on the ground while the man rifled through her purse, and before she could react, he vanished into the early morning darkness. The trauma left Alexandra shaken, but she provided police with a description of her assailant, noting a distinctive mole on his lip. Detective Paul McLaughlin of the Boston Police Department pulled up 10 possible suspects from the booking system and began piecing together leads, unaware that this was only the beginning of a horrifying day.
I'm a sergeant detective with the Boston Police Department. I was in the courthouse with my squad. We were awaiting a jury verdict on another homicide trial. And I was told about an incident that happened at about 4:24 in the morning where a victim named Alexandra Cruz had been attacked by a man.
The Alexandria thing, this is everybody's worst nightmare.
I pulled the incident report, and there was a description of an individual from Alexandra Cruz, a Hispanic male. One of the particular things that she talked about was that he had a mole on his lip. As a result, I did a query in our booking system. From that query, I came up with about 10 possibilities, and I pulled a picture of a guy who lived in South Boston and put it in my pocket.
Just hours later, another young woman, Amy Lord, became entangled in the same nightmare. Amy, a 24-year-old Massachusetts native, was captured on multiple ATM cameras across South Boston, appearing terrified and injured. Her black SUV, which she owned, was driven by a masked man who forced her to empty her bank accounts. Amy's left eye was swollen, evidence of the violent encounter she had suffered. At each ATM stop, she would briefly roll down the window, show the driver the money, and then retreat into the vehicle, moving quickly between locations. Between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., Amy's accounts were drained at 5 different banks, and by 8 a.m., her SUV was found ablaze in a nearby parking lot. By 11 a.m., her manager reported her missing, and police scrambled to track her down using only CCTV footage. The thought of connecting Amy's kidnapping to Alexandra's attack began to take shape as both incidents occurred within blocks of each other and followed a similarly violent pattern. Meanwhile, 19-year-old college student Kayleigh Ballantyne was living a seemingly normal life in Boston. 3 months earlier, she had moved from a small town in Maine to spend the summer working an internship and a restaurant job while keeping up with her field hockey training. Her mother, Kim, and her best friend had helped her settle in, teaching her the subway routes and helping her navigate the city. Despite her mother's worry about the dangers of a big city, Kayleigh adapted quickly, maintaining her independence and adventurous spirit. But on the night of July 23rd, she would unknowingly place herself in the path of the same man terrorizing South Boston. As the morning unfolded, Detective McLaughlin and his team worked tirelessly to investigate both incidents. The Alexandra Cruz attack had already put the department on high alert, and the report of Amy Lord's disappearance only heightened concerns. Amy's parents and friends arrived from Wilbraham to meet the detective at her apartment, finding no signs of forced entry or struggle. Her black Jeep and wallet were missing, the only clues pointing to a violent abduction. Police began to collect CCTV footage from the various banks Amy had visited, hoping to identify her kidnapper and prevent further attacks. The day's events escalated when another woman was found in a pool of blood, intensifying fears that a serial offender was active in South Boston. Kayleigh, unaware of the unfolding horror, became a potential next target. Her instincts, however, would soon play a critical role, as she had been quietly observing the city and the suspect, positioning herself to intervene and seek justice for the victims. The combination of random violence, strategic abduction, and targeted stalking created a tense atmosphere throughout Boston. Each moment counted, and police, families, and survivors alike were gripped by the urgency to stop the South Boston slasher before more lives were endangered. What began as a routine morning for Alexandra Cruz quickly turned into a day of terror for multiple young women, including Amy Lord, whose abduction and forced financial transactions revealed a calculating predator.
We all look at each other because it sounds like the same thing that just happened. And we don't know, not again.
It was a 617 number. And I said, oh my gosh, this is Kayleigh. It was a horrible feeling. And I just stood looking at the phone thinking something bad has happened. I know something bad has happened. He said, this is Bobby Flynn from the Boston Police Department. Your daughter's been stabbed. And I just became hysterical. I wanted to speak to her. And he said, you can't talk to her right now. She's in the emergency room. They're working on her. I was thinking this person was trying to kill my daughter. What if he's still out there? Where is he? They didn't have him. What if he knew that she hadn't passed away? I was very afraid that he would come into the hospital and come after her.
Amid the chaos, Kayleigh Ballantyne stood at the edge of danger, unknowingly preparing to confront a criminal who had already left a trail of fear and violence in the city. As the investigation unfolded, detectives relied on CCTV footage, witness statements, and financial records racing against time to locate Amy and bring the attacker to justice. The first CCTV footage is from Bank of America, time-stamped at 6:28 a.m., showing Amy Lord at the ATM. At first glance, nothing appeared unusual that could help police track her or her abductor. However, just as detectives began reviewing the tape, another video arrived from Citizen Bank, captured at 6:43 a.m. This footage revealed a shocking turn. Amy exited her black Jeep from the passenger side, while the vehicle backed up on its own, driven by someone else. Her left eye and the side of her face appeared swollen, indicating she had been assaulted. McLaughlin reviewed each frame meticulously, noting the redness and puffiness around her eyes and nose, clear evidence of a violent encounter. It was unmistakable that this was no voluntary transaction. Amy was being forced to comply. Additional footage continued to surface. Sovereign Bank's tape, recorded at 6:36 a.m., offered a less clear view of the driver, but it reinforced the signs of Amy's distress. The final two videos, however, would provide critical information. Metro Credit Union footage, time-stamped at 6:14 a.m., captured Amy's Jeep pulling into the parking lot. The driver was briefly visible through the glass before quickly covering his face and reappearing with a cap, though a brief moment revealed a closely shaved head. Amy leaned over the driver in what appeared to be compliance with his demands, while he remained in the vehicle, careful to avoid a clear facial capture. In parallel, Detective Flynn obtained video surveillance from a building across the street from Amy's Dorchester Street apartment. The footage showed a male figure walking past her door moments before she descended the stairs. Though the video quality was poor, it appeared the man observed Amy before forcibly confronting her. The images conveyed the palpable fear she must have felt, aware that the assailant knew where she lived, her routines, and her car. Amy's compliance in the videos reflected not choice, but survival instinct under extreme duress. Before detectives could process more details, devastating news struck. Amy Lord's black Jeep was found burned beyond recognition earlier that morning in South Boston. McLaughlin recalls the sinking feeling. The discovery confirmed the abduction had escalated into a homicide. By late afternoon, the worst fears were realized. Police were called to Hyde Park, where a body had been found in a wooded area. Upon arrival, McLaughlin confirmed it was Amy. She had been beaten, stabbed over a dozen times, and stripped, save for an angel wing necklace around her neck. The brutality of her murder left even seasoned detectives shaken. McLaughlin, a father himself, thought immediately of the pain her family would endure, reflecting on the sheer senselessness of the violence. Despite the emotional toll, there was no time to linger. The perpetrator remained at large, and the same man had attacked Alexandra Cruz earlier that day. McLaughlin immediately requested CCTV footage from streets connecting the initial assault to Amy's apartment, hoping to trace the killer's movements and possibly identify him. The pattern suggested a single, violent offender targeting women in South Boston, moving quickly and deliberately through the area. By evening, Amy's murder dominated local news, prompting warnings for women to stay indoors or walk in pairs. Meanwhile, Kayleigh Ballantyne, a college student working late in Cambridge, was oblivious to the escalating panic. After taking the T to Broadway, she faced a short walk home. By 11:45 p.m., she was a block away from her Gate Street apartment when she was violently attacked. Her roommate, upon opening the door, discovered blood everywhere and Kayleigh barely conscious on the floor. Detectives outside Amy's apartment rushed to the scene, realizing that yet another attack had occurred within a stone's throw of their previous investigation. In rural Maine, Kayleigh's mother, Kim, was awakened by a phone call in the middle of the night. Detective Bobby Flynn informed her that Kayleigh had been stabbed and was in critical condition at the emergency room. Kim's terror was immediate. She feared not only for her daughter's life, but also that the attacker remained at large. The 2-hour drive to Boston felt endless as she envisioned the worst-case scenario. Back in South Boston, Flynn and McLaughlin traced the suspect's path using nearby security cameras. The man, a young adult with multiple tattoos and a tank top, had left a trail of blood and terror. As Flynn reviewed the evidence, a startling revelation came over the radio. The suspect was reportedly in the same hospital as Kayleigh. Rushing to Tufts Medical Center with lights flashing and sirens wailing, Flynn entered the emergency room to find Kayleigh gripping his arm in panic. She had realized the attacker was nearby, alive, and capable of continuing his spree. One of the EMTs who had heard Kayleigh describe her attacker earlier that night recognized a man matching her description walking down the hospital hallway. He immediately alerted security, and Tufts Medical Center went into lockdown. Detective Bobby Flynn, already with Kayleigh, received the signal and realized the suspect, now under their direct supervision, had entered the same hospital. Meanwhile, Detective Paul McLaughlin remained on the streets, meticulously tracing every security camera that might have captured their elusive killer. He still carried in his pocket the photograph from the Alexandra Cruz case, a haunting reminder that this man had already attacked another young woman. Soon, Flynn received a call confirming the connection. The man in the hospital matched the description McLaughlin had given, a young adult with multiple tattoos and a tank top. His hand bore a deep gash, likely inflicted during the violent struggle with Kayleigh. Each piece of evidence pointed unmistakably to him as her assailant, though at that moment it remained uncertain whether he had murdered Amy Lord. Flynn and his team were determined to keep the suspect away from Kayleigh, carefully restraining him in the emergency room. They avoided a physical confrontation, surrounding him with officers until he could be safely placed under arrest. The suspect, soon identified as 28-year-old Edwin Alamany, was questioned in a separate room. He denied everything, concocting a story about a street fight and repeatedly refusing to acknowledge the attacks. His denials were predictable, a long series of evasions masking a violent reality. Meanwhile, Kim, Kayleigh's mother, finally arrived in Boston. She was escorted to Tufts Medical Center, overwhelmed with relief to find her daughter alive, but still fearing that the nightmare was far from over. Kayleigh had suffered 5 stab wounds on her left arm, 2 on her torso, 1 under her left breast, perilously close to her heart, 1 on her left ribcage that collapsed her lung, and 2 on her face. When she first saw the doctor, her primary concern was survival, asking simply if she would live. Despite the horrors, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for her family's presence, drawing comfort from their support amid the chaos. While Flynn remained at the hospital protecting Kayleigh, McLaughlin traced Edwin's movements using surveillance footage. Among the tapes was one showing Edwin, minutes after Amy Lord's murder, buying gasoline near the location where her Jeep had been discovered ablaze. At the gas station, he encountered an acquaintance who later confirmed his identity. Additional footage showed Edwin using Amy's money across the city, purchasing a new phone under the alias Slim Shady, lottery tickets, alcohol, cigarettes, and even treating friends to dinner at a Chinese restaurant, seemingly unbothered by the chaos he had caused. After Kayleigh's attack, he continued to flaunt his bloodied appearance, bragging about the fight and traveling by cab to the hospital, leaving a chilling display of audacity in his wake. Forensics later confirmed his involvement. DNA found on his sneakers matched Amy Lord, definitively linking him to the entire spree. Back at Tufts, Flynn faced the difficult task of informing Kayleigh about Amy's fate. She had unknowingly survived an encounter with a serial predator who had already taken another woman's life. For several days, Flynn and the team withheld the information, trying to shield her from the emotional weight of the news. When he finally revealed that Edwin had murdered Amy Lord, the reality struck Kayleigh with overwhelming grief and guilt. She had survived, but another life had been lost at the hands of the same man. The emotions were raw and immediate, a mixture of pride in surviving and deep sorrow for Amy. In the following years, Kayleigh worked to process the trauma. Recovery was slow and painful, compounded by the stress of legal proceedings. Yet McLaughlin and Flynn's diligent investigation ensured that justice was served. At sentencing, Kayleigh delivered a heartfelt statement recounting her journey and the profound impact of the attacks. She also carried Amy Lord's angel wing necklace, a symbol of remembrance and resilience, feeling the other woman's presence as she spoke. Over time, life gradually returned to normal. Kayleigh completed her studies, Alexandra Cruz rebuilt her life, McLaughlin advanced in his career, and Flynn retired, yet the shared experience forged an enduring bond between them. Years later, Kayleigh reached a place of healing and forgiveness. Despite the pain Edwin had caused, she chose to write him a letter from prison, acknowledging the suffering while reclaiming her own power. Forgiveness became her path to peace, allowing her to move forward with fulfillment and gratitude. She reflected that, while hate had defined her early responses, the conscious decision to forgive was what truly enabled her to heal. In forgiving Edwin Alimony, Kayleigh reclaimed her life, honored Amy Lord, and demonstrated the resilience and strength of a survivor who refused to be defined by violence. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for more interesting videos like this.